Hello and welcome to Switch Scheme. One of my favorite genre of games are what are sometimes referred to as DRPGs, or Dungeon Crawl RPGs. They generally refer to an RPG game wherein you have to traverse specific dungeons, going as deep as you can, in some cases to get rarer and better loot. Now among these we have two types, first person and third person. In this video we're going to be focusing more on first person DRPGs specifically. Now if you enjoy the content, drop a like and sub. What video would you like to see next when we look at our top favorites of a certain genre? Now keep in mind this list is in no particular order and they're just my personal favorites, so let's get started. Now when I first saw Labyrinth of Galleria, or Galleria depending on how you want to say it, I was instantly hooked. I absolutely love the art style as it reminded me of the Disgaea art, which makes sense due to it being from NIS. You follow Eureka as she applies for a new job and finds herself in a strange situation that involves magic, dungeons, and monsters. The story is like a glazed jelly-filled donut, if you will. It has a pretty basic look on the outside, but hidden inside is a rich deliciousness. The story at first will appear very simple and obvious, but as it goes on, it gets deeper and it takes some turns that will truly surprise you. The gameplay, as will be the case with all the games on this list, sees you exploring dungeons, going as far as you dare to go, trying to get loot, to either sell or use, and make it back before you die. However, this game has a system that I absolutely love, and it reminds me of Dark Souls. Your XP that you get in battle cannot be used immediately. You actually have to make it out of the dungeon in order to allocate that to specific characters. And if you die in the dungeon, you lose it all. It really tests how much risk-reward you're willing to go through. The characters are fine, nothing too standout, but the designs of the characters' art and the monsters are really what make it compelling to me. If you aren't into the dialogue-heavy text walls that plague NIS storytelling, you may find the story a bit too much, but trust me, even if you aren't here for the story, the gameplay will carry you through to the end of the 40-plus hour campaign. Labyrinth of Galleria is phenomenal. Coming in at number 2, we have the Atrian Odyssey Origins Collection. Atrian Odyssey was my first experience with first-person dungeon crawl RPGs. I had them on my Nintendo DS. As you can imagine, what brought me to them was, of course, the artwork. I was initially lost on this concept, and I was hoping that the story would drive me through it. But whether it's Atrian Odyssey 1, 2, or 3, it's just backseat window dressing for the outstanding top-of-the-line dungeon crawling. Some of the narrative in the game happens in the dungeon. You will have decisions thrown at you, and you have to decide on the outcome. Rescue the creature trapped in the bear trap, or leave it there. Well, this is one of the few games daring enough to punish you for doing the honorable thing, as once you release it, it'll attack you after calling for help. It makes your altruistic actions questionably worth it. Your characters are also non-important in terms of the story. If you've ever played Dragon Quest III, where you picked your teammate from a tavern at the beginning and they were basically just non-existent except for the purposes of battle, it's the same here. You just pick your team and go. It's really fun. One thing you do have to note, though, is that these games are not new player friendly. They do not hold your hand and they do not guide you along any path. You are dropped in with the expectation that you will win by trial by fire. Did I mention that this collection also comes with 3 games? That is a huge win on value, and if you are a veteran lover of DRPGs, I highly suggest picking this up. Coming in at number 3, Morero Crystal H. Look, I am no stranger to being a man of culture, and my playtime with Morero Crystal H is proof. I absolutely love this game because of how nuts it's willing to be. You play what they lovingly refer to as the lucky pervert, who is accompanied by a sea otter, I think, and an angel. The story goes that an entity has stolen the dark bra, which must be accompanied by the light panties at all time in order to keep the world in balance. The entity is going around placing the dark bra upon monster girls, turning them evil. You must race through the dungeons to locate and place the panties of light on them to purge the darkness away. By doing so, you can now recruit them into your party. Yes, it's ridiculous. And yes, it is technically perverted. But mechanically, it's a phenomenal game. You control up to 5 monster girls at a time, each having an element that they can use to damage enemies. Much like Pokemon, they will have strengths and weaknesses to each. You have to build bonds with them and provide them gifts and pats on the head to make them happier with you. It's not going to be a game you're going to play in public, and if the theme turns you off, you will not like this game at all. But if you want to take my word for it, it is funny, surprisingly deep, and it's one of those games you'll just enjoy playing for fun. Now at number 4 we have Mary Skelter 2 and Mary Skelter Nightmares by default. Mary Skelter is actually a series I am brand new to, and I may have Finale up higher, but I don't have a copy of it at this time and haven't played it. The story of Nightmares follows characters trapped in a giant place called the Jail, and Mary Skelter 2 basically follows a team who was sent to help those in the first game. It's actually a fun way to make the two stories link together, and the way it fleshes out the characters you saw in the first game in part 2, quite satisfying. The story can be a bit dark in theme, but not in look. The characters you'll meet are based on storybook characters such as Sleeping Beauty or Rapunzel, and these characters all have abilities that help you traverse the dungeons and solve puzzles, such as using Rapunzel's hair. With 2 games, it has a lot of DRPG action, although it is pretty standard fare. Turn-based, first-person, take up to 5 characters, and go. Although basic in premise, I am glad that I picked this up and got into the series because it's quickly becoming a favorite of mine in the DRPG space. Now, if only I could get my hands on Finale. Coming in at number 5, we have Undernaut's Labyrinth of Yomi. Labyrinth of Yomi is a really interesting take on the DRPG. It aesthetically reminded me more of Shin Megami Tensei and that stylistic look of the enemies and characters. The story has it that you're a dungeon delver whose job it is to go into this dungeon, basically, and try to discover its purpose and gather loot for the company. The gameplay is very standard DRPG, but one thing that I really liked about it was the job system. You have 6 backgrounds and 8 jobs to choose from, and these all play out in how your character's stats grow and their abilities that they can use. The story is okay, and honestly, it kind of bored me. But the gameplay was where I was hooked. I love the exploration, the backtracking, and the use of these things called Yomi flowers that alter the dungeon to create paths. It won't hit everyone's DRPG itch, as it is rather basic compared to some of these contemporaries, but it is still a great addition if you need something new to pick up. At number 6, we have one of the more uniquely looking games, Labyrinth of Zangetsu. Now, Labyrinth of Zangetsu is admittedly not the best DRPG on the Switch. There are better games. However, that doesn't discount its contributions. It has, hands down, in my opinion, one of the most unique looks among video gaming as a whole. And the icing on the cake, if you will, is that the story and art go hand in hand. The world is covered in a dark imbued ink, and you must find your way through ink demons and monsters to cure the land. It's a basic concept, but laid out in such a wonderful aesthetic. The combat is going to be familiar to any DRPG player, and the job system is nothing new. However, the job system does do one thing different that, honestly, I, as well as many other reviewers that I've researched, find frustrating. These different classes require specific stat walls to hit, such as 15 strength or 10 intelligence, and some classes will lose stat points as they go up in level. So, for example, your warrior can start with 15 intelligence, but as he goes up in level and reaches max, he may only have 6, right? He got stronger, but dumber as a result. Well, this means that although you invested all this time in this warrior, now he cannot become a wizard because, guess what? His intelligence is below that threshold. It can be a pain, and honestly, once you figure it out, it's not that bad, but it is a hindrance that you really just wish didn't exist. Now, I hope I didn't turn you off the game just by mentioning that alone, but it would be odd not to mention it since it is such a strange design decision. Still, it's one of my favorite DRPGs out there, and it's not that long, which means some of these minor flaws don't overstay their welcome. Operencia the Stolen Sun comes in at number 7. This is another new one to me. I generally try to steer away from digital-only titles. I like my shelves. But there is one thing about Operencia that won me over: the graphics. Not saying that they are good or the best out there, but most DRPGs are 2D, except for maybe the dungeon itself. But this game's combat has 3D models, and the world you explore looks to have more depth in it from a 3D standpoint. It just looks so intriguing when you compare it to the static dungeon walls and monster designs found in other games of this same genre. The story is actually neat, mixing in traditional fantasy with Hungarian mythology, which is a sentence we don't get to say often in gaming. So that's a unique aspect on its own. There are also a lot of puzzles, which was nice. They try to be creative with them, and it's a nice touch to break up the combat-heavy gameplay style that DRPGs generally come with. The combat was actually really cool, because there are lanes that you can attack, and you have to make sure strategically that you're attacking the right lane if you want to hit a specific enemy. Character development is also pretty standard, it's not too complicated. The simplicity of this is fine, though, because unlike most DRPGs, with their huge campaigns and long playtimes, Operencia clocks in on average around 20 hours, which for a DRPG is actually pretty short. The benefit, though, is that you can replay it quicker with a new team or setup. I was truly surprised by this one and very happy to have it in my collection, even if it's only on digital. Well, there you have it, my top 7 DRPGs, specifically first-person view dungeon crawls. I know I missed a few. Like I said, I haven't been able to get my hands on Mary Skelter Finale, and although I own Lost Child, I have not had a chance to play it yet. If you have any DRPGs you suggest that I try or deserve a spot on this list, let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this list, drop a like and sub. I'm already working on my next list, my top traditional turn-based RPGs. Think Final Fantasy X in style. Thank you all for being a part of this community, and as always, Have a great day.